Ladies and gentlemen, your favorite white colonizing Zionist, Tall the Traveling Clack, coming to you live from the United States of America. Get your white colonizer merch, your little Judean merch, in the description down below at thetravelingclack.com. And let's jump right into this video from the king himself, Douglas Murray.
Death cults is a mixture of first-hand reporting and observation, interviews, and a wider reflection, not just on the war that's been going on since the 7th of October, but the war that's been going on a lot longer. And also, I suppose, on what for me is one of the overwhelming questions, which I'm sure we'll get to, which is the reaction in the rest of the world.
I believe this is
obviously on the 7th itself.
Lex Friedman's podcast.
It was a brigade-sized attack on Israel from Gaza. Hamas broke through the security fence and attacked all the softest targets they could. They swiftly overwhelmed things like the observation base in Nahal Oz. They ran through the communities in the south, very peaceful, peacenik, effectively communities of the kibbutzim, as they're called, the communities, and murdered and raped and burned and kidnapped. And of course, they, from their point of view, had the great good fortune of also coming across hundreds of young people dancing in the early hours of the morning at a dance party and rampaged through that with RPGs and Kalashnikovs and grenades and hammers and more, and got within, 20 kilometers into Israel, places like Ofakim and Sderot, important towns, and carried out their massacres there as well. We now know that the plan was that Hezbollah did the same thing from the north. Hezbollah joined in the war within 24 hours by starting firing rockets again in very large numbers into northern Israel from southern Lebanon. But the plan was that they would do the same thing from the north and carry out similar massacres there and effectively be able to meet in the middle and garrote Israel from the center. The interesting reason why, I think it'll be found out in the future, but why they didn't coordinate better was Hamas didn't trust any line of communication to Hezbollah to let them know exactly when they were going to do it that wouldn't be intercepted. The Iranian revolutionary government in Tehran, which obviously funds Hamas and Hezbollah and trains and arms, knew of the plan. It was a very successful attempt to annihilate the state, but they didn't get close to that, but they got worryingly closer than people might have thought they were capable of. I think from the Israeli side, it was obviously one of the most, if not the most catastrophic intelligence and military failure since the foundation of the state. And I think there are several reasons why. One is a perception problem. What a lot of military commanders and others described to me as the conception that had prevailed in Israel for some years in the security and military establishment was that Hamas were content with being corrupt and governing Gaza and, lining their pockets and living in Qatar and becoming billionaires, but that, like many other terrorist groups and, cults, that they would end up becoming just corrupt and not losing their ideology, but the ideology becomes secondary. That's the first thing, was there was just a massive error of the conception in Israel. And then there are the multiple, manifold security and military failures of the day and leading up to the day. And there already have been quite a lot of people held to account for that, and there doubtless will be in the future as well. The single thing I heard, which I heard most and which was most distressing in a way, was the number of people who described to me, who survived the massacres in the South, who said that, they'd said to their children, "Don't worry, the army will be here in minutes," and they weren't. In many places it was many hours till the army got there. And there are reasons for that. There are some reasons that will be military failings, leadership failings, other things were I discovered were very human failings. I don't want to overstress the failure of the army, because actually certain units and things got down very fast. There's a unit of Devan who got down to the junction, by within about an hour, 90 minutes of the massacres starting, and joined in the fight. And then there were self-starters, who I write about in the book, extraordinary people who just like broke orders and just realized the magnitude of what was happening and said, we're needed in the south, go, and fought very hard for hours, days, in some cases. But the complexities on the ground were unbelievable. I mean, as usually happens in warfare, but what they call the fog of war is a very real thing. You know what you can see it in hindsight, but you can't see when you're in it. And one of the things that made it very complicated was, for instance, Hamas coming in, taking uniforms off dead Israelis, wearing them, coming in with Israeli-style apparatus on them. There's a Muslim doctor I quote in the book I interviewed, who describes how he was going to he's an Israeli Muslim Arab, and he's a doctor, he was going to his shift at the hospital at 6:30 in the morning. The rockets start coming in, because the rockets started first and then the full invasion. And he described to me how he's one of the members of this group, the United Hatzalah, which is a first responders group, and they sort of, they get an alert, and it tells them that a car has crashed nearby, and they put on their first aid kit and so on and go. And he got one of those alerts at one of the junctions, and realized there was a car, that something had happened, and there were some dead bodies. And he stops, and he sees these men dressed as soldiers, and they start, and he's wearing his Hatzalah gear, and they start firing at him, and he just thinks, what the hell is going on? And they turned out to be Hamas dressed as Israeli soldiers. They used him as a human shield to try to protect from any air assault, and in the end they shot him and left him, and he survived. He's a very, very brave man. So there was a lot of confusion like that. There's a girl whose father I interviewed. She was at the Nova party, and I met him at one of the reunions of the party in the weeks after, and the reunions of the survivors and the family and so on. And he described how in the last moments of his daughter's life, she phoned him on her phone, like a lot of people. He reassured her the army would get there and so on. And her boyfriend was shot in the head and was lying on her lap, and she was obviously panicked. And they'd managed to get into a car and escape the party, but they went to a community where they thought they'd be safe in the south of Israel, and they were told to stay where they were by somebody who she said was a policeman, and he wasn't a policeman. He was Hamas dressed as police, and she died. She was shot and killed as well. And so there was a lot of confusion like that. It hopefully we're the world will find out exactly what went wrong. Israel will find out exactly what went wrong that led to this catastrophe. But I mean, it was a complete catastrophe.
Do you have a sense of how such an intelligence failure could have happened? So there's a bit of a temptation to go into conspiracy land, because it's such a giant intelligence failure. It seems that there was some manipulation on the inside for political reasons, or for...
You don't need to go into conspiracy land. I mean, I think there are people who say that there were parts of the intelligence network and so on that were withholding the information. I don't know. Again, people will find out. There's an awful lot of politics inside Israel, and it's hard to know that at this stage. I think most people are sort of still Israeli and not Israeli, including people who are anti-Israel, who just believe that Israeli military and particularly intelligence dominance is so strong that there must have been some kind of conspiracy. Otherwise, how could this have happened? I don't think you need to go into that. I think that, for instance, some of the young women at the observation base are on the record. They've said, I've spoken to them myself, and who said that they had been warning in the weeks running up to the 7th that they were seeing maneuvers and training by the border, which suggested that Hamas was going to do something like this, and they say that they were ignored. Though you speak to some of the more senior commanders about that, and they say the thing is that this stuff was happening all the time. So it's very hard to know at the moment.
So here's the situation. I obviously agree with Douglas. You know, I've had in the last year the opportunity. I don't know where you're following me from right now, whoever is watching this video. But for those of you who don't know, I've been in Israel since a little bit after the beginning of the war. And I traveled all throughout the country collecting the pieces of the story of October 7th. Both on the northern borders, the southern borders, the center of Israel. I lived through parts of the war myself and the different rocket barrages from the different terrorist groups. And while I was traveling the land, you know, I got the opportunity to interact with a lot of people who went through the 7th itself. I got to see footage on army bases, stuff that will replay in my life, in my mind forever. Stuff that wasn't released to the public. On how our girls, our innocent civilians, I saw the most detailed and gruesome videos of how people were executed and assassinated. And when it comes down to brass tacks and we want to point the finger at somebody, the reality is the blame really, really, really comes down to incompetence. There has been a serious level of incompetence in Israel for years now. My parents will tell you it was from when they were kids. My grandparents will tell you it was from when they were kids. I'll tell you it was from when I was a kid. But the reality is we got caught with our pants on the ground. We got caught with our pants around our ankles. We got caught on the toilet. And as funny as that may seem, the truth is that's what happened. There was a degree of unprofessionality, a degree of non-seriousness in the army and in the government level that led to this. I really, really, really dug deep into in the beginning, I didn't answer those questions because I was like, this does sound like something nefarious. But after really doing a lot of research and digging into it and seeing what kind of happened all across the border of southern Israel, and then what was also being planned for the north, it's very conclusive to me that this was not done in any sort of nefarious way by somebody on the inside, but very much so an incompetent lack of understanding who we were up against. Not because of Hamas or Hezbollah wielding some sort of, you know, uneven power against Israel, but more so the fact that the Islamic regime of Iran and Egypt had a hand in really emboldening and arming both Lebanon, Hezbollah, and Hamas in Gaza. And that led to a huge military intelligence failure. And it's on the part of every single one of us in Israel, citizens, to hold the government accountable, especially in the future, going towards the future, for something like this to never ever happen again, but also to find out truly what went wrong and who is to blame. Not to start a campaign of trying to persecute people, but trying to understand who really caused this to happen. But the core thing that I want everybody to walk away with this video is when we can point fingers at Israel all day, every day, but the one true and only perpetrators of this massacre are the Palestinian people and Hamas. And I say the Palestinian people because it's all the Palestinian people who celebrated with Knaf after. It's the ones who were slapping the head of Shani Luke as she was in the pickup truck, dragged by her body, bleeding. It's the Palestinian people who broke through the fence and started massacring people randomly. It's not just Hamas. It is the Palestinian people who are very much in bed with this idea of murdering Jews en masse. So it's not just Hamas. It's also the Palestinian people. And those are the people to blame for October 7th. Not Bibi Netanyahu, not Israel, not the hostages, not Israeli presence, not Israeli colonialism or Mizrahi Jews or Ashkenazi Jews or Ethiopian Jews. It's Hamas. It's a terrorist group that wanted to do this and was happy to do this and stands by it today as a successful operation, even as Gaza lays in ruin. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do want to support the channel, consider buying some White Colonizer merch or my little Judean shirt. at thetravelingclad.com in the description, and I will see you guys in the next one. I love you a long time. Goodbye, Clad. If you believe in my content and want to support me, just know your help is needed. There's a bunch of great ways to support me, being PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, or joining my Patreon community down below. Patreon is the best way to support my channel, and you'll get a bunch of cool perks depending on what tier you join. Another great way to support me is by buying my merchandise on thetravelingclat.com. I regularly drop new merch designs like this beautiful hat, or this amazing shirt, where you can support the channel and get something cool for yourself. I also have an amazing Discord community with people from all over the world. Thank you so much for your support.